Hey, for another shot fired.
Copy, additional shot fired.
Shot fired. He's shooting at us.
Suspect shooting at officer.
Suspect down. He's at the base of the stairs. White t-shirt, white male.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Shots Fired podcast. Thanks for tuning in with us. I'm Kyle, and this is Billy. We have an exciting guest for you guys on tonight. We're happy to introduce him. We'll get to that in just a second. First, we'd like to say, hey, thank you for everyone that's been following us, tuning into our show, and listening to what we have to say. We really appreciate it. Thank you for all the feedback that you guys have given us. We honestly can't thank you guys enough. If you guys have any comments, anything you would like to hear from us, make sure you guys let us know in the comment section. And please, if you're listening to this on iTunes or Spotify or whatever podcast app you're listening to, make sure you guys are leaving us a comment on iTunes, and it really helps us, boost our listening, and our listeners. So we thank you for that. Billy, how was your weekend this weekend?
Weekend, I didn't do much. Started college football, so watched some college football.
Are you doing any NFL drafts?
I did. I got 2 fantasy leagues.
I didn't even know you watched football.
Oh,
Yeah.
you know me?
Yeah. Well, I work weekend graveyard, so
yeah. So you can't?
No, I don't. Not a whole lot of free time during my weekends. So usually when you're at work, I'm off, and then when you're off, I'm at work. So
no, we legit have the exact opposite schedule.
Yeah, that's all right. Anyways,
it's all right. I've had enough of you already.
Son of a bitch. All right, well, let's get started. Let's bring on our next guest. We're excited to have him. All right, folks, we're going to introduce our next guest to you. We're super excited. He's been in law enforcement for 22 years. He's held several assignments to include a sergeant, SWAT, full-time terrorism, and intelligent task force unit. He was a field training officer, an academy instructor, a field supervisor, and an incident commander, and he is the owner and founder of Savage Training Group. And we'll get into that a little later. And if GQ magazine did a law enforcement edition, he would definitely be on the cover. We would like to welcome Scott Savage to the show. Scott, thanks for being on. And
thank you.
Yeah, thanks for taking time out of your night to do this.
Yeah.
Billy and Kyle, that was an incredible intro. Let's do that 10 more times in a row. Every day, if possible. That felt good.
Yeah, maybe we'll ship this off to GQ, and maybe we can get you a contract or something, but dang.
Let me get my wife. I want you to do that one more time.
Yeah.
I tell her I'm cool, and she's not believing it just yet. No, thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, for sure.
What a great time.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're excited to have you on. We have a lot to talk about. This is going to be a great show. I think not only just for anybody in law enforcement, but newer cops, guys that are wanting to be in law enforcement, and even guys that have been in the job for a long time. There's a lot of stuff coming down the pipes that I think is important we talk about tonight to educate everybody. So let's dive into it. Let's talk a little bit about where you grew up, where you're from, and how you got into law enforcement.
Yeah, born and raised in the Bay Area of California. Grew up in Silicon Valley, but have nothing to do with computers, right? So kind of a unicorn.
Yeah.
Don't know the first thing about computers, but grew up here. And, the reason I became a cop is before I was a policeman, I was a paramedic. And,
oh, no kidding.
Yeah, EMT at age 19, paramedic at 23. It's all I've ever known is being in emergency services, and loved it. Gosh, I loved being a paramedic. You guys would be interested to know this. When people call the paramedics, they're actually happy to see them.
Yeah.
You've never experienced this. You wouldn't know what this is like. Just trust me. There is sometimes people are happy to see them. It was awesome, but the fire department started taking over paramedic service, and so we kind of had to, maybe take a little bit of a back seat, and that wasn't a good place for me, right? I wanted to be in the front seat, and so I started thinking about what's a career that is like being a paramedic. It's exciting. It's outside. It's intellectually challenging, physically challenging. It's noble. I wanted everything in a career, and police work seemed like the next logical step. I had law enforcement in my family, but it was a bit of a taboo subject, if I'm being honest, because my grandfather was a policeman in Amarillo, Texas, and he unfortunately was killed in the line of duty in 1945.
No kidding.
And, yeah, I had heard the story. through passing from relatives, but in the Savage household, that wasn't something you discussed because my dad, who was about 10 years old when it happened, the only time he ever talked about it, he said, saw my dad going to work, walking to work. He was a detective at Amarillo PD. He had a Stetson hat on, walking to work, and my dad was playing catch out front. And he told my dad, I'll be back after work to play with you, and he never came back.
No kidding.
Came back. Yeah, my grandfather went into a store because he saw two guys that they were looking for that did a burglary. Right? So he saw the two guys sitting in a diner, just like you or I would do. He contacted them and he arrested them and he put them in the back of his car, or in the front of his car. There wasn't a back.
Yeah.
There's no shield. There's no. There was
nothing.
No, technology like we all have. But he missed a gun on one of them.
Oh man.
And story goes, the guy pulls out the gun, points it at my grandfather, and says, "Keep driving." What my grandfather knows, they were both escaped convicts that had broken out of prison, I think in a nearby state, and they weren't going back, kind of thing. And so my grandfather had a choice to make: let these guys kidnap him and go out and wreak havoc and do Lord knows what, or attack him. And so he attacked him.
Wow.
And the guy, suspect, shot my grandfather. I think the first round went through his teeth, blew out his teeth. Next couple rounds went in his chest and kicked out my grandfather on the steps of a National Guard armory. And then they drove and went on a crime spree, and they were actually later taken up by New Mexico Highway Patrol. So
no kidding.
Those guys. And those, that's a good word we can use for them, suspects, went to Alcatraz.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
Alcatraz.
How'd they get caught?
They got caught in a car stop.
Just like
I don't know. There wasn't enough knowledge to say was it an investigative car stop. They get taken off on a taillight. But they had carjacked a woman's car, so maybe they had some sort of BOL in the vehicle. It's 1940s. The articles that I have don't say a lot about why they stopped them, but they did stop them, and they went to prison. And that was kind of a taboo subject. And so when it was 1999, I was like, I'm going to apply to be a cop. I had to sit my dad down and ask him about that. Are you okay with that? Are you okay with your son taking on the career field that killed your dad?
Yeah. Yeah.
And he said, yeah, sir, absolutely. That'd be just fine. Kind of matter of fact, because he wasn't an emotional guy. His emotions stopped at age 10, and don't really know how he really felt about it because he wouldn't be in touch with that. But but I became a cop, and that story kind of stuck with me. Every time I'm searching a suspect, I think about that, right? And just to be real careful and double check. If someone hands you a prisoner, for all the cops who are listening, you're going to do a transport for Billy or I or Kyle. It's okay to research them.
Yeah.
No offense.
Yeah, we encourage that.
Yeah. They're going in your car, so you research them and you be real careful. And been a cop for 22 years, and now I own a training company, and I get to use that story to inspire me to design courses that are hopefully helping cops stay safe, stay out of jail, which you have to worry about now, right? Save lives. And so it's been an absolute pleasure being a police officer in California. It's hard. It's tough. My hat's off to all the young guys and girls that are signing up for this right now. Yeah. Right? Can't imagine doing 30 more years, only have 10 more years left. Still a working cop today, still doing it, still in it. So I feel for all your listeners who are cops or thinking about being cops, I'm with you. Yeah. And so I'm here to be of service to you today. So we'll share some stories, we'll share some insight, and we'll hopefully keep all of you safe.
Hell yeah. Dang, that was a heavy intro.
Yeah. I was like, man, that's not exactly what I was expecting.
Yeah, dang. Wow. I mean, that's incredible. I mean, that's crazy. That was 1945, you said?
Yeah, it was 1945. You want to look at the story?
I'm going to look at that up, yeah.
Lemuel Dodd, D-O-D-D, Savage. When you Google him, I think the only hit you get is the Officer Down Memorial page. Where it's got a little bit of a story on there about him that some guys have put together. But I actually reached out to Amarillo PD several years ago and said, do you have anything on this?
Yeah.
And their chief, Man, he put together everything they had. It wasn't much.
Yeah, back then, yeah.
Yeah. And then my dad, when he passed away a few years ago, he gave me all of his dad's effects. And there's some belts and some gear and some, his academy certificate kind of thing when he passed the academy. But the most interesting thing, this is going to freak you out, is there was a little paper notebook about that big. Mm-hmm. It looked exactly like the ones that are in your pocket, everyone's pocket.
Yeah.
It had names, DOBs, addresses.
No kidding.
Pictures and stuff like that. Except this one had a bullet hole in it.
No shit.
Yeah. It occurred to me, though, when I was looking at it, for 22 years, I've had a stupid little cheap, whatever they're giving away at the PD notebook in my pocket that has scribbles in it.
Yeah.
Some name or DOB. His had the same thing. And this is going back so many years. So many things have changed. Technology, tasers, public executions.
Yeah.
Many things haven't changed.
Yeah.
Right.
And interesting,
That is crazy. Wow.
Well, like you, I come from a law enforcement family too. So it's interesting, same thing. I got, my dad was in law enforcement and my grandpa, and I think it skipped my great grandpa. It was great or great grandpa or something. It skipped a generation in there, but I get all these things too. I go to my dad's house and he's got all those memorabilia. Some of it, not necessarily relating to his career, but something that he's acquired from somebody else or something. But it's amazing to see all the changes and I grew up in it, so I mean, my dad gave me holsters of his, and they're literally revolver holsters.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, you guys had revolvers?
Yeah.
I'm like, how old are you? And he's like, I'm not that old. I'm like,
he's Scotch age.
no, he's older than that.
I remember the boys pulling the cars.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, my dad and I actually ended up going to the exact same academy. Obviously,
that's cool.
Many years apart, but the same agency, the same academy. And it was, I remember looking on the wall. I don't know how you guys' academies are, but they have placards.
Yeah.
And found my dad's placard, name on it and everything. I said, hey, I already went through this. Wow. I'm good.
That's crazy. I mean, yeah, it's a heavy intro, but kind of similar to you. I mean, usually we don't talk about our intros, but I'm going to say that I kind of follow the same path you did. Actually, when I got out of high school, I got my EMT license, and I wanted to be a paramedic. And I got a job doing an intern job on an ambulance, and I worked on an ambulance company for about a year. So I was in high school, my senior year, when I got my EMT license. I started doing an internship, so I was like 17. And then I want to say 18 years old, I got on this ambulance company where I grew up. And I guess opposite of you, I hated it, to be honest, because I just felt like I got some gross stories, but I got like shit on, puked on, dealing with like, I remember the first time I did CPR on somebody, I was like 17 years old, and that's pretty heavy for a 17-year-old high schooler to do that. I remember I literally went home and I like cried because the person died and their spouse was there watching, and I've never experienced anything like that in my life. And I'm 17 years old. I go home to my parents after getting off work, and my mom's like, how was it? And I like cry. I just started crying, and it was crazy. And it wasn't for me. Kudos to everybody that does that for a job. I mean, that takes a certain individual to do that, because you're dealing with you're dealing with sick individuals every single day, and not just like your typical sickness, like really foul, gross things. And I wasn't into it. So, my uncle was a cop where I grew up in the same town, and I really looked up to him. He's good looking dude, really fit, like looked good in the uniform. Every time I saw him, I was like, man, that's awesome. I don't know. He was like a real mentor to me, and like a second father figure, really. And he took me on a ride along one time, and I'm like, I'm doing this. It was so awesome. That's how I got in law enforcement. I was like, forget the paramedic route. I'm going to be a cop. And so that's kind of how I got into it. The same thing, being an EMT, and then got into law enforcement after that. So, and I started at 20. I was super young, probably too young to start. Yeah, for sure. Like looking back, yeah, absolutely. Nobody should be a cop at 19, 20 years old. I mean, but it worked out for me. Fortunately I started in a real small agency, small town. So, but, yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that, but, yeah, it's kind of crazy about your grandfather. That's wild. So, when you got out of high school, I mean, did you go to college? Did you jump right into? I know you did the paramedic thing, but when you had that conversation with your dad, I mean, how'd that go? Was he open to it, or was he?
I think he was blissfully emotionally unavailable. I think
really
what had happened to him
makes sense.
Old, stunted his emotional ability, his growth to kind of have that kind of conversation. I'm sure he was terrified.
Yeah,
I'm sure he was very worried, but it wasn't something he could express. And it left me now, as an adult, I understand that when a policeman is killed, this causes a sort of ripple effect in generations. And anytime I've shared that story, like when I'm teaching a class and talking to students, anytime I share that story, and sometimes I do, sometimes I don't, that story I let people know, if something were to happen to you tonight, it will carry on for generations. It will affect people you've never even met.
Yeah.
Your children's unborn children, this will go on, and it causes this pain, right? And it's why, when you've been doing this job for so long, you get used to things like having a gun, right? Just think about it for a second. We're so used to having a gun. You walk around all day long with a gun, talking about potentially shooting someone, when we can shoot them, who's trying to shoot us. And we talk about it like we're ordering dinner. It's like a non-fact. We are in this incredible job, right? And we deal with some amazing, exotic, incredible things. But we need just to take a step back sometimes and be like, wow, this job can really injure me and kill me.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And everything we do, we've got to be so careful. And life, in order to preserve life, we've got to get it right every time. Death only has to be correct once.
Yeah.
Right? And
you're absolutely right.
From being an EMT or being a paramedic and being a police officer, I can just think of so many times when it was like, I'm surprised I'm still here. Like,
yeah.
I remember as a paramedic one time we were on a freeway and we're extricating somebody from a car, which is a fancy word for getting out. We're getting them out. Why do they say extricating? I don't know.
Because the firefighters like to say it.
Yeah, it's cool firefighter talk.
Yeah.
We're getting them out of a car in the freeway. Freaking cars are going by on 101. And oh my God. And I remember my foot was, we're trying to get this dude out, and my foot was kind of, I guess, in another lane, the next lane where they had to shut it down. And a voice told me, move your foot right now. So I move my foot right now. Freaking car comes by. Wow, almost like,
damn.
Jesus, and it's just like an average Wednesday.
Yeah.
And then I'm just some young kid like, this is awesome, I almost died today.
Yeah. That's crazy.
So, it's sometimes we get so cavalier about the things that we're doing, and then not even to mention being a police officer, we get so cavalier about these things. But
I know.
I appreciate you saying that. You did CPR and you went home and cried. You should.
Yeah.
It's super sad. Someone died.
Yeah.
It's okay to be like, this is gross, or this is scary, or all that stuff. So if you're a young cat and you're listening, or you're an old guy like me and you're listening, it's okay to be like sad or have feelings about things, because if you don't, that'll make you kind of a strange guy, right?
Yeah, you're either
misery and heartache.
Yeah.
You're either sometimes.
I think if you're like that, you're either faking it to make it, or man, if you bottle that stuff up like that, holy smokes, it'll come out eventually, and it won't be in a good way. So, and we've talked a lot about that in one of our episodes. All right, so obviously, Dad kind of had a disconnect. It sounds like, with probably you getting into law enforcement, rightfully so. I don't blame him for that. How old were you when you got into law enforcement?
Let's see, I was like 25, I think I was. Yeah, 25 years old. I was like, cool, I'm going to be a cop. What do you need to do? And so I started looking around for places that were hiring, and found a couple different places, figured out who I qualified for, sent them applications, and the first agency I applied for, I did great. I applied, took an oral or took a physical test or whatever the requirements were. Everything was great. And then I got to backgrounds, and they, in backgrounds for you guys that are trying to become cops, we're going to hand you a personal history statement or a personal history questionnaire, which is
it's only that thick.
Yeah, a 50-page document. Yeah. Well, please check all the terrible things you've done in life.
Yeah.
Right? Every nasty.
And don't lie. And don't lie.
Yeah, and you better be honest.
Yeah, about every little thing.
Yeah. And that's what I had heard. They said if you lie, well, you die. Like, you got to be honest. And I was like, oh, I'm the most honest person I'll ever meet. So one of the things says, have you ever done this? Have you ever done this? And it's like a checkbox. Have you ever, hit and run, forgery, blah, blah, blah. So it comes down to one, and it says, you ever passed a bad check? And I was like, totally. Yeah, sure have. Because when I was a kid and we first got your checkbook, don't know what you're doing. So you bounce checks. Ooh, bounce.
Yeah.
So I marked, I passed bad checks 100%.
Oh, God.
I failed the background.
Yeah.
And I had a friend of mine who was a cop. I had him, can you look at my PHS? I made a copy of it and tell me maybe why. So he's reading it and goes, oh, dear God, you're like admitting to felonies.
Yeah.
You idiot. You didn't pass a bad check. This is a crime.
Yeah. It wasn't intentional. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Got it. So tried again. Put in all these different agencies, and one here in the San Francisco Bay Area said yes. I've never really been to that town before. Don't know that I really even knew exactly where it was, but they said yes, and I was like,
I'm going. Nice.
Who cares?
Yeah.
And so worked there for 18 years. Had a great time. Used to tell people I would do this for free. I can't believe they pay us for this.
Yeah.
I think for the first 5 years of my career, I didn't know how much I made an hour. I didn't. Retirement, what is that? Retirement benefits, why would I care? That sounds like something for old guys. All I know is they give you, here's your keys to a fast car. Here's your gun. Now go chase people. And I was like, this is amazing,
Yeah. Yep.
So
I felt the same.
Years, I'm sure you guys felt the same. First couple years, you're like, this is great.
How much do you get paid an hour? I'm like, shit, I don't know, but I got like a brand new truck in my driveway. I'm like living at my parents' house. I'm 20. I didn't give a shit. Yeah. And I definitely didn't care about my retirement, but it's funny. Like, you're right. Within like the first 5 years, it's like, I really don't think you care. Like, you're so stoked to be a cop. Usually that, unless you get into it, later in life and you're a little bit older and you know kind of what those things are. But man, as a young cop, you should pay attention to that stuff early on because it goes quick. And then sometimes if you're not investing in your deferred comp or whatever, some type of separate retirement, like, it might be too late later. So yeah, that's funny. I mean, I think we all felt like that.
I could say it's a little bit different for me because we started in corrections, and you're like, fuck, I want to get out of here.
Yeah, that's true.
I want to be a cop. That's what you keep telling, like, I want to, like, I'll go do this, I'll go do whatever. So you're sitting there, and I think that the first 2 years of corrections for any law enforcement officer, I think is great, especially for someone like me. I came from a small town where I didn't have a background of talking to people that may have committed criminals or crimes and stuff like that. After 2 years, you're like, get me the freak out of here. I want out of here. I need to be out of here. And you start being like, this sucks. But then you get out into patrol, and it's like, it's great because it's a rebirth. I always call it. And you're like, this is why I did it. And you get to live that dream for, like you said, 5 years, and sometimes that's 5 years into your career, or I know some people it was 8 years into their career, but you get that to restart and you feel young again, I guess.
That's
funny.
On patrol as a young guy, you just want to go out and stop every car that moves. You want to just try everything. You'll apply for any assignment, anything. You're volunteering for overtime, and that's cool. Like that's like the honeymoon phase, and so I wouldn't just anyone that's thinking of being a cop, I wouldn't discourage any of that. You should no.
I would encourage it. Yeah.
Well, I would add to that a little bit is I see some younger people in my department, and they're like, they go to corrections obviously, and then they go to patrol, and they're like, anything specialty position to get out of patrol, and I'm like, no. You need to figure out where you want to go. And if it's somewhere you want to go, then or if it's somewhere that will help you to go to where you want to go, then do it. But don't just be like, I just want to be a detective.
Yeah, do patrol for 2 years.
Whatever. I just want to do whatever it is. Figure out what it is you want to do, and work towards that. And if someone offers, it's hard because in a department, if someone says, "Hey, you should put in for this," guess what? You should put in for this.
You should really put in for that.
No matter what. Yep. Even if it's something you're like, I don't really know if that's my thing. Just should become your thing real quick.
Yeah, I think as a young cop, I remember, and obviously, like I said, I was really young, but man, I was doing what you said. I was like just stopping everybody, like everybody. I was just yanking people over, and I worked with some salty asshole dude on my patrol shift, and where I worked, there was like 3 of us, so and a sergeant. And I think he got real tired of it. One night, he freaking pulls me aside. He literally gets on the radio and he's like, "Hey, meet me over here." So I meet him, and he looks at me stone cold. He's like, "You're gonna knock this shit off tonight." And I'm like, "Yes, sir."
Right.
And I did not talk back. I knew exactly what he was talking about because he's having to cover me on all this crap.
Yeah.
And he put an end to that shit real quick. And I stopped. I was like, "Yes, sir." And I became a little bit more picky about who I was going to pull over. But yeah, I mean, as a new cop, I mean, I would encourage that. Go out there, and how else are you going to learn? Go out and stop people, interact with folks. I mean, in law enforcement, I think it takes a little while to figure out the gray area. But there is a huge gray area in law enforcement. Go test the waters and figure out. It's not just black and white, so anyways, that's funny. I mean, I can relate totally to that.
Well, on your story, I would like to put a little PSA out there. If you're that old salty dog who doesn't like backing up your partner on every little stupid vehicle stop, don't tell them not to do the vehicle stop. Teach them what vehicles to stop.
Yeah, that's true.
Don't be there and sit there and be like, "Hey, you're making me work." Don't be lazy.
Yeah.
Don't be that OG who's like, you're doing it wrong. Teach them how to do it. Say, "Hey, these are some things I've looked through in my 15, 20, 10, whatever years experience."
And if you're that young kid, right? So I think everyone experiences this. You're a young guy, you go out and you're working night shift, and you're stopping every car, and you're pissing off the rest of your team.
Yep.
It's going on since the
forever
of cop work, right?
Yeah.
Here's a trick. Here's a PSA for the kids. You're a young cat, and you want to go out and stop everyone, but you're with a bunch of old guys, and they don't want to do nothing. So here's what you do. Go out and stop everyone. They're going to fill with you, and, they're not going to like that. But then also, when you hear them get a paper call, answer it for the paper call, and you tell them, MDC them, and say, "Oh, I also want experience in all these paper calls, so let me take that from you." Now
that's
this
great.
one who's going, "I love that kid. He's great. He's trying to learn everything. He's my guy, blah, blah, blah." They're going to, that's a Jedi mind trick. Don't do a frontal assault on these guys. Come back and flank them like that and just be like, "You're making all the arrests, and let me take that paper because I want to learn how to do, forgery or elder abuse, whatever those, paper, all that horrible paper. Take that." And then those guys are like, "Yeah, this kid's pretty cool," and they'll give you the thumbs up kind of thing. And eventually you'll get on a team, a swing shift or something like that with a bunch of young, Thundercats like you, and you guys can just go out and stop everything that moves, and you'll all love it, right?
Yep. Yeah. That's a great point. That is a very good point. So if you're listening and you're new and you're experiencing that, take Scott up on that. That's actually a really good point. Earn some respect too. All right. So do you have any cool, funny stories as a rookie cop? I mean, any big mistakes that you made that stand out to you or that you want to share? Or?
I would be hard pressed to think of something rad and cool I did. Like there I was, I have a million stupid stories. When I was on FTO, first time, I went to a second ACI. I was FTO the second time. As an old guy, that's another tale. But as a brand new kid on FTO, all is like the letter of the law. You don't understand anything, and you just barely understand the law.
Yeah,
and I remember it was my first phase FTO, like week 1, and it's towards the end of the week, and I remember we were patrolling a parking lot, and there was this kind of seedy motel, and my FTO he was a street crimes guy. He loved jamming people up, but I wasn't really understanding the difference between what he was trying to have us do and traffic law. And so I remember we went to this hotel, and someone had, wait for it, expired tags.
Classic.
And I was like, "Not in my town, you don't."
Yeah.
So I told him when I got back to work the next day, he's like, "What do you want to do today?" And I was like, "I want to go back and tow that car."
He's all
like,
no.
You mean the one that's registered to like a 70-year-old lady that stays? And I was like, yeah, because the vehicle code says, and he's like, don't finish that sentence. And I was like, oh, got it. So there's a difference between what we're out there really trying to accomplish. So maybe I wrote down, okay, so don't tow the 70-year-old car. Got it.
Yep, got it.
Next great story. There we were. We make a high-risk car stop on a guy who's got a felony warrant. It's me and two dudes I went to the academy with are my fills. So it's like dumb, dumber, and me, dumbass. All brand new. Yeah. And we make this felony car stop, and my partner's like calling him out, and we're yelling at the guy, hey, you know, with your left hand, spin around, do this, do that. Everything's going great. It's just like the academy. Mm-hmm. And so he's totally compliant. He's very compliant until what I'm about to tell him. So I get it in my head because some instructor in the academy, I believe, which these guys deny, some instructor in the academy said, you know what you should do is lie to these guys and tell them you have a dog. Tell them you have a canine. Yeah. Because they're not scared of you guys. They're scared of canines. Yeah. So the guy's totally compliant. We're pulling him out of the car. Everything's going great. And I say, good dog. Because I think that's what canine handlers say to their dogs. Good dog, right? Yeah. And this guy turns around, drops his hands, and says, who are you calling a dog? Oh. And I was like, nah, I'm talking to my fake dog. And then he fights, and it's a melee, and pepper spray, and the fisticuffs, and this. Oh, man. And my partners were literally looking at me like, why would you say that?
What'd you do? Oh, God. Yeah.
See, in my head, it was going to be like the most tactical, cool thing ever to do.
Yeah. How about like,
as they're like, here's your paper. This is totally your report.
Well, how about something like, hey, we're going to send the dog to bite you, or we have a canine or whatever. That works too. You know, don't say good dog.
Yeah.
That's pretty funny.
Really up on the canine terms at that point.
As you were barking in the background.
Yeah.
Hey, I had a sergeant that did that. No shit. Yeah, it's funny, huh?
I learned later because later on I was on a pedestrian stop in kind of a bad part of town, and this guy was like looking around, and he was on his heels, and he's like getting ready to run, and I was like, oh my God, I think he's gonna run, and he looked much faster than I was. And right then, a life flight helicopter flying into the hospital was flying over. Oh, I started talking to the helicopter and saying, no, this guy says he's not going to run. Like, hey, you're not going to run, are you, right? I'm just going to let the helicopter run. The guy's like, oh, no, I'm not going to run. That one worked, but the good dog thing, don't do that.
So, funny story about a helicopter. I got to throw this one out there. So I'm new. Well, so I had lateral to where I'm at now from my previous agency, and I was only there for a few years. So I was, I think 23, right? So I lateral over to the agency I'm at now, and I'm young, and I got put on a really good team with some solid guys that were like, they were awesome. Like, they were my mentors. And honest to God, I'm probably who I am a little bit today of being a cop is from this patrol team that I was on. So I could not have asked for anything greater. And this guy, he's now a lieutenant, Chad. He and I go to like a burglary in progress, and we get there first, and Chad's a very fit guy, and the helicopter's overhead, and we got him, the spotlights on him, and he's in this court or whatever, and he's obviously like, he's hyped up on drugs or something, and he kind of like, he's giving us that stare, and when we pulled up, he was literally actively trying to break in through the front door of this house. And so he sees us, he comes out, spotlights on him from the helicopter, and this was pretty classic. I don't know how Chad thought of this, but the guy like balls his fists up, and he's ready to go fisticuffs with us, and right, like we try to avoid that or whatever. So Chad points at the helicopter, and he goes, what is that? And the guy literally like looks up like, huh? And boom, like tackles him like a freaking NFL player and just lays him out. Yes. And I'm like this young kid, I'm like, holy shit. It was just fucking funny. I'm like, that's awesome. How the hell? Yeah, it was just like, good on him for thinking about that, you know, 'cause otherwise we would have had to fight this guy, or, you know, we could have got hurt, or he would have got hurt. I mean, but it was just funny. He's like, what is that? And like points at the helicopter, and the guy's all, huh? And then boom, gets fucking wiped out. So,
UFO? Oh my God.
Yeah. That was classic. I was like, dude, that was awesome. So anyways, Yeah, that's good stuff. I mean, I think we all do stupid stuff as rookies. I mean, gosh, we could probably share stories forever about that. But so as you kind of progressed in your career at that agency, you obviously got on the SWAT team. How long were you at the PD before you got on the SWAT team?
I was on only for a couple of years because it was a small department, and one of the issues they had is the only guys that could pass the PT test were the physical tests were the young guys.
Yeah, that's
so
typical.
Super experienced dudes that probably belonged on the SWAT team and had the experience couldn't pass the physical test or the shooting.
Yeah.
So you had young guys doing it, and I think that's kind of a common thing in law enforcement.
Yeah, it is.
You know, guys get out of the academy, they're super fit, that lasts for a few years, and that physical fitness standard kind of goes down.
Mm-hmm.
But I put in for it, probably had no business doing that, and every other assignment I had as a cop.
Yeah.
But very few people wanted to put in for those things. I loved it. It was mostly just training, but I thought it was awesome. It was fun, and you got to learn a lot, and that really, sparked my interest in tactics and being tactical, which has nothing to do with being on SWAT or how much Velcro you have on your uniform. It's really about thinking. Right?
Yeah.
And I started falling in love with this idea of outsmarting adversaries, and that thing just kept going as my career went on. It's the thing I loved the most was just someone was trying to outsmart us, and we were trying to outsmart them, right?
Yeah.
And the difference between being a firefighter and a paramedic and a police officer is, as police officers, we have human adversaries, right?
Mm-hmm.
As a fireman, you're dealing with fire. It's a dangerous job.
Yeah. Yep.
It has its own tactics to go in it, but it'll never try to connive against you. It'll never try to outthink you. It'll never try to trick you, right?
Yep.
And so I just love that SWAT thing where, we're having to learn how to deal with someone who's, we're trying to inflict our will on them. They won't allow it. And we're trying to figure out how can we trick them, fool them, overpower them, confuse them, all those stuff. And shortly after getting on SWAT, an assignment came in on like a little street crimes team the department had. I put in for that. I got to buy some dope. I got to work prostitution. I got to work surveillance. I can't believe they're paying me for this. I literally couldn't believe they were paying me for this stuff. And that lasted a couple years. After that, I think I went back to patrol, put in for FTO, which I just loved, teaching, and had some recruits and got to, mentor them and show them sort of how I like to do police work. And it was about being assertive and being aggressive, but being professional. And I would tell the recruits, hey, the trainees, we're going to be professional in everything we do.
Yeah.
We're going to be professional in the way we're speaking to people. And if somebody resists, we're going to be really good, really good at overpowering them and getting them into custody. We're professional at that too. Yeah. We're not just, professionalism isn't just, we're being kind to people or being respectful. No, when it's time to fight someone, damn, we're really good at this. Yeah. And gee, this guy's in handcuffs all of a sudden. He was wondering what the hell just happened. Yeah. So that was great. And somewhere along those lines, 9/11 happened. Mm-hmm. And that, like everyone else who was a cop at the time, we were all confused and wondering how this could have occurred. And on 9/11 and 9/12 and 2 weeks after that, my agency decided we're going to put SWAT guys with rifles out in front of different pieces of critical infrastructure. So I guarded a Jewish community center for a while. I guarded a power plant or some shit for a while. Nobody
that's
knew
cool.
what to do.
That's cool. I mean, it's a cool experience.
Was it? It seemed horrible.
Well, when you're probably the guy, you're like probably on high alert, like you're a young SWAT guy and at a freaking power plant.
Seems like you were working the jail.
Yeah. It's funny. No
Guarding.
one knew what to do. No one knew what to do. So the department said, you know what we'll do? We'll identify critical infrastructure in town. We'll put cops standing in front of it. Yeah. And we really didn't understand as municipal law enforcement, terrorism or that kind of stuff. But a few years later, a spot opened up on a terrorism task force, a fusion center called the NICRIC, Northern California Regional Intelligence Center, and I applied for it. I got it. I got to go work in San Francisco for a couple of years and got a top secret security clearance and did the terrorism thing, and just thought that was awesome too.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And that's just been my career. It's just been one cool thing after the other. It's all really hard. it's all very hard to get those positions and to try to be good at them. But little old me, got to do that stuff, and it's amazing what, as a police officer, you can do. And maybe when you're in the middle of it, you don't notice how cool it is, right? You're just like, well, it's I got to go to work tomorrow. My work is this. But when you look back, you're like, gee, that was kind of different. And you could write a book about this stuff.
Yeah. What kind of training did you have to do to get on that terrorism task force? You said it was a full-time thing, right?
Full-time gig. I was a detective assigned full-time to the Northern California Regional Intelligence Center. And there wasn't a big training to get in there. It was the training kind of came after, because different departments had committed to this, entity to hand over personnel, and I just happened to be working for a department that made that agreement. And so they did a process, and I got the thing because I had started studying and putting myself through online classes and all that stuff. So for you dudes that are listening, that you're like, my department sucks and they never send me to training classes, there's a million ways to get not only good training, but to start building your resume. There's a lot of online stuff. A lot of it's free. It's from Department of Homeland Security, or it's from the local state post agencies. There's a lot that you can get. Is it the most interesting thing in the world? No. Is it? No, but not really. But it sure could build your resume, and you've got all these classes. So when you go to put in for something, you're like, well, I did put myself through this and that. So don't just be thinking like, I got to get sent to this class, and my department denied me, and so my department sucks. I mean, I literally own a company that sells classes, so I want you to buy classes more than anyone else. But I'm just telling you, there's another way to do it. I started networking with people, which I know you guys will back me up on this. We got to network with folks, and that's something that our agency or our industry is huge on. I started collecting people's business cards from other agencies, from big agencies, from the FBI, and I started, hey, can I buy you coffee? Can I buy you ask you about X, Y, and Z? And started getting on committees, like Homeland Security Committee for this whatever thing. And one time I met my chief at one of them. He's like, what are you doing here? And I was like, oh, I'm on this committee too, as an officer.
No kidding.
Like, oh, okay. Right.
That's cool.
So that's cool. For something, he's like, oh yeah, that's the guy that I saw at the, so there's a lot of different ways to build your resume legitimately. I'm not saying, just go put yourself through a bunch of silly classes to build your resume.
Yeah.
There's a lot of ways to get experience, talk to experienced students, network. And then once you get in those assignments, you just start making contacts, right? You want your cell phone contact list to be bigger than the next guy's. So if I know, if I got we're working a case and it's up where, Billy or Kyle works, I'm not going to call their department number. I'm never going to get anybody.
You're going to call us
around. But if I need a report, or hey, dude, can you guys go look at a car for me, or can you drive by this house and tell me what you see? Boom, I've got a cell phone number, and so little things like that will carry you farther, and you just keep kind of building on the next thing, and then before you know it, man, you're the guy. You've got all this experience. So.
You're the expert. Yeah, I can agree more. Like, some guys will submit, like, I'm a sergeant now, patrol, and I'll get like training requests from a guy, a fairly new cop or whatever, and he'll submit like a training request for like advanced narcotics school, and I'm like, why? We're not sending you to this. Like, come on, dude. So, if you're listening to this and you are new and you want to go to these classes, like, good on you, but go to classes that are relevant to what you're doing now. You'll get those advanced classes when you get into those types of units. Don't get pissed off because your boss probably tells you don't need to go to that class. And to be honest with you, I agree. You're trying to build on a skill set that you're never going to use at this point in your career. There's a time and a place for that, I think, and you'll get there. You nailed it on the head as far as like networking. He and I are both in, in specialized units where you go to a conference or classes or training or whatever, and all these other guys from other agencies are there, or gals, and the best results I've probably gotten from help is networking, getting phone numbers, and it never fails where like at some point you're going to need them. And that's a great way to learn too, is talk with other people and network. Don't always rely on your boss to send you to some school that you think might be cool. May not help you right now. But network, like Scott said, go online. There's a ton of classes online. Scott, you offer classes online.
Yeah, when COVID hit, we had to kind of, we obviously couldn't do in-person training for a while, and so we created some online classes. And I was just trying to think, like, God, in 20 years, I've been to some horrible online harassment. Security, computer security, malware, click through it. I've been through all that nonsense. I was like, how do we do it differently? And I was like, all right, make it cool, make it quick, make it like high def, make it no timers so that, you have to stay in the class for so long. And just one of them has some like rock music behind it because I'm like, that sounds better than listening to like little things. But, you just said something a second ago, Kyle, that made me think, because you were saying, don't worry if your boss or your agency doesn't do this. I would even build on that and say, your agency is not the be-all, end-all of law enforcement.
No.
Right? So let's say you're a police officer, whether you're new or you're experienced, and you're working at an agency where, you're getting denied the classes you want. Let's say you do want to put yourself through advanced narcotic, underwater knife fighting school, whatever. You think that's awesome.
Yeah.
You think it's bullshit that your department won't put you through it, and this place sucks. Got it. You can put yourself through that class, right?
Yep. Yeah.
You could take the time off, burn the vacation, and pay the tuition. And a lot of guys in our industry, what they do is they go, well, I'm not paying for that. They should be training me.
Yeah.
Okay. How much money did you just spend on a gun?
Mm-hmm.
And how many guns did you already have? And how much money are you going to spend on a brand new truck that you honestly don't need? And how much money are you spending on a golf club? But you won't spend $200. I'm not paying $200 to go to that class. That's bullshit. Come on, right? Which one's going to get you farther, right?
I agree.
I agree. These training classes can skyrocket your career, skyrocket your skill set. You're going to get to meet people. You're going to learn about some stuff. Get outside of your own department, right? Get outside of just the four walls that you operate in, and watch YouTube videos, listen to podcasts, go to training classes, grab people that work in other agencies and say, dude, can I just sit you down and like ask you a couple of questions? Yeah. Get different perspectives on it. Now, maybe your department is the best, most awesomest, squared away, police department in the world, or maybe there's different ways of looking at things. And that's certainly been my perspective. Is I want to hear everyone's take on stuff, and then you start taking all of that and kind of building. This is how I'm going to go out and do business. I'm going to be this kind of cop based on what I learned. Billy's doing this thing over here, and I really like that. But Kyle, what he's doing, that's not probably going to work for me. So, but I'm going to take little pieces of that, and I'm going to build, my own repertoire or my resume and how I do business.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about you, Billy, but I can't tell you how many times where like I got turned down for training because of staffing or whatever. And I know everyone across the nation right now is dealing with staffing and recruitment and retention and stuff. But I would fork out the $200 or whatever to go to a 1 or 2 day class. Like I put myself through a search warrant class, right? It was like a couple $100, two day course, whatever. I think I even had to pay for my own hotel, but I'm like, hey, do you want to go? Do you want the training or do you not want the training? I mean, a couple $100, you should be able to fork that out to go to a training that's going to benefit you. I mean, don't always rely on your department to, send you in that direction. And like where he works, huge agency, if you don't find yourself on probably a patrol team or like in a special assignment with a person on that team that probably is an expert in something where you could pick their brain and learn from them, someone that you literally work with within your own four walls of your department, I'd probably find that hard to believe. Even if you work at a smaller agency, like there's usually somebody there that's an expert. Learn from your own people sometimes. I mean, that's undervalued, I think.
I will tell you, I don't know of any major field within law enforcement that I can't find an expert on my department. And it's because of the vast size and the amount of people who have done it. And, you run into, and there are trends that change. You can't say, I know from my background has a narcotics background. So, we could say, hey, this is what narcotics did 10 years ago or 20 years ago or whatever, where meth labs were everywhere or they were going to meth labs. We just don't do meth labs anymore. It's not cost effective in California to do a meth lab when you can just ship it up from Mexico for a lot cheaper. So things things have definitely evolved, but you can definitely take things from those OGs and those guys who know it and go like, hey, this is, you know, for the instance of labs or narcotics labs, this is what we did. And you're like, okay, I can relate it to what nowadays probably your honey oils or your meth oils or your marijuana oils and stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah, there's always somebody that should know something. I mean, so yeah, if you're the guy or gal that like puts in for a class and doesn't get it, and you get pissed off, and then you just throw in the towel. I mean, come on, you know, think outside the box a little bit. So you did that for a little bit. How was it? You jumped into being an instructor at the academy. Obviously, I'm assuming you probably went to like a post-regulated school to be an instructor. And then what you jumped into an academy that obviously unaffiliated with your agency, right? Because you guys don't have your own academy.
Yeah. I volunteered to become an instructor at the academy. I had taught for years, just in-house in my department. I taught even as far as back as being a paramedic. I really loved teaching. I just thought that was great. And if I never was in public safety, that's probably what I would be doing. And I just enjoyed that. I enjoyed having to know the material so well that you can teach it and ask questions. And I just thought that was interesting. And I was a really shy kid growing up, and so public speaking was never, you know, my forte. But I remembered learning kind of around the time I was an EMT that if you pretend and you fake it and you act like you're confident, the audience really wants you to be confident. They don't want you to be nervous because then it makes them nervous. They actually want you to succeed. And I kind of got over that little hump, and then I faked it just long enough to where I started getting confident. And I started learning, you know, what worked and what didn't. And the academy was just such a great playground to learn the art of teaching, because those kids love everything you say, right? They're a really warm audience, and they're just like, oh, it's like listening to Socrates. Yes, Scott, please tell us about police work. And so it's great, and you kind of make your mistakes, and you learn what works. And I taught the same class many, many times at the academy for probably 12 years, and the same subjects. And I would always have the same jokes, the same stories, and the same kind of like curriculum. And I was able to keep fine-tuning it every year until where it got really tight and really like, I knew what they would laugh at. I knew what they would say. I could anticipate their questions. I knew what worked. And I started just like getting the performance part of it down. Yeah. Into where it was awesome. And a couple of times the kids voted me like, you know, most bestest instructor or whatever. And I was most like, that's rad. You know, they thought it was great. And then, you know, fast forward now to what I'm doing as an instructor and owning a company that has law enforcement instructors, the learning lesson and the evolving from that old teaching at the academy, what I learned from some of the guys that work for me is one of my instructors one time said, are you doing things that are entertaining or informative? Yeah. Are you a comedian, or are you ensuring learning has occurred? Yeah. And I was like, oh, fuck, I'm not sure. You know, like, I think I'm just making people laugh sometimes. And I had to take a hard look in the mirror. And so, yes, I developed those teaching chops in the academy, but now that has matured into it's great to make people laugh, and it's great to tell poignant stories, and it's great to have good timing, and all that stuff is what makes a dynamic instructor. But can you take those skills and actually transfer knowledge? Yeah. And can you ensure that learning has occurred? And then can we take it to the next level where we know learning has occurred and they're going to be able to perform something in the field? Yeah. So it's just been a real fascinating journey from being an instructor for so long. And that's what turns me on now, is just like, has learning occurred? What is the modern science of learning? Because, you can go to those post-instructor classes and all that stuff. That's great if you need a piece of paper and if there's anyone else that teaches that out there, I'm sure you guys do a great job. Here's a test. If you want a test to know if you're at a good instructor class or not, here's the test. If your instructor or any class you're going to about training mentions the following subject, I want you to put your red flag up, okay? Here it is. If anyone tells you something along the lines of, learners are either auditory, visual, or kinesthetic. They learn by hearing, doing, or seeing.
Yeah.
And what we need to do is we need to see how people learn, and then we need to modify how we teach. And I'm going to have now pass out a little thing for you guys to fill out to figure out which learner you are. Okay. I want you to ask them, where's the science that supports that?
Yeah.
And they're going to say, I'm sorry, what? Yes, you're saying something that sounds sciencey. Can you show me the data, the science, the research that supports what you're alleging, which is that people have a predominant learning style, and that I should do something about that as an instructor?
Yeah.
That has never been scientifically vetted. And matter of fact, it's been disproven many, many times. And as I've done the research, the original study on that was on fifth graders.
No kidding.
Which was never vetted in adults. And yet, in police training world, and when you go to be an instructor, you're spoon-fed this stuff as if it's something. It's not real, guys. It's pseudoscience. And if you hear that, these well-meaning instructors that just don't know any better, they're regurgitating what the people have told them. I want you to go, ooh, we can do better.
Yeah.
We can do better. There's plenty of other books out there to read, plenty of other content to consume that would help you be an awesome instructor, and that's not it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I also, you brought up we can do better. I think that we should always strive to do better. Like if you ever at a point in your career, teaching, whatever, and you're like, yeah, I'm doing it. Like I'm the best there is at it. You know, I can't get any better than this. Then you know you've given up and you're full of shit too. Right. But
I was actually going to ask Billy when he mentioned being vetted out by a bunch of fifth graders. Were you a part of that? were you a part of that vetting process?
Yeah, those kids were what we call upperclassmen.
Yeah. They're actually smarter than you.
But yeah, you know, I got that third grade education.
Yeah. Are you smarter than a fifth grader? Billy failed that. I agree with you. You know, like I go around and teach a class too, and you know, which is how I found you. I really enjoy your content that you put out. You know, you're professional. You're a funny guy at the same time. You know, I gravitated to that, and that's how I got to know you and reached out to you, and we started chatting. And I really appreciate you even giving me the time you helped me out. You gave me some pointers. You know, some people in the training industry I've noticed are kind of like, they hold it to themselves a little bit. And for me personally, I'm like, man, we're kind of in this to help everybody. And there's absolutely no way in hell that one guy or one training group can reach every law enforcement officer in this country. Like, there's just no way. So to me, I'm like, hey, the more we all know, the better. And if there's people out there that are wanting to start a training business or whatever, or that have a training business, you know, and you want to reach out to another training group, like, I don't see a problem with that. We're all here to help each other and make everybody else better. So
literally here to train. Yeah.
And so I appreciate you doing that. You helped me out. I've had the opposite actually. So thank you for that.
Well, yeah, of course. Right. And so like when people reach out to me and they say, oh, you've got this company that looks like it's successful. Yeah. I'm happy to tell you anything I did and maybe even tell you some of the mistakes I've made. And then, you know, it's not easy owning a business, and it's not easy owning a business while you're still an active police officer. And for anyone to tell you kind of, they want to hold their cards close to the chest because they're feeling insecure. You know, they're feeling insecure, like they're not super comfortable with what they have, and they think you're going to somehow impact that, or they don't want the secret sauce. And you know, if there's anyone listening that is a cop, you're thinking about starting a business, or you have a business, you know, one of the conversations that Kyle and I had was about just do research, right? Mm-hmm. Before I own a company. It's called the Savage Training Group, and it's a law enforcement training company. We've got trained cops. Yeah. And before I started that company, I did a year of research. Mm-hmm. A solid year of research into all the stuff I don't know. And if you think about it, why would I know anything about marketing and branding and website design and social media outreach and copywriting? And how would I know anything about that? You know, sometimes as police officers, we have big egos and we think I'm pretty awesome at this subject I'm going to teach. I'm an awesome teacher, so I'll just throw up a website. People should just give me money because I'm just that awesome. But you know, that's not the way it works. And sometimes guys start companies and it's great, great product or service, but no one knows about it. Mm-hmm. You know, and they'll hop on Instagram, they'll hop on LinkedIn, they'll start saying we do this and we do that because it sounds cool to you say we, like we're this major corporation, right? And meanwhile, it's just you. You're sitting in your basement,
you're like, it's just you,
everywhere, you know, putting stuff on Instagram. It's okay. Just be like, no, I did this, and you don't have to pretend. But you got to do the research, and you got to learn about how do people make purchasing decisions, right? Sales shouldn't be sleazy. If you look at sales as being sleazy, I guess I would ask you, what product are you trying to sell people? Is it not worth it? Because I look at everything we do, all the classes, all the energy we put in, and the time and the research, and I go, I would be negligent if I didn't share this with every cop. Like, you know, especially, you know, we all work in California where every month there's a new law that's making our job harder. I feel for all these guys. There's thousands of cops in California. I'm like, have you seen this? Have you looked at that? Have you considered this scenario? Can I show you this new law? We researched it. We found this. You know, have you thought about this tactic on handling this very specific tactical situation? So if you have something that's worthwhile, you want everyone to buy it, be a part of it, but you got to do the research, man. You can't just, you know, hop on Squarespace or whatever it was. You're going to throw together some website, and they make it super easy, right? It's easy to start an Instagram. It's easy to start a website. It's easy. But no one's going to do that. And I can count probably 3 or 4 different good cops that started businesses, and they've either folded or they've completely turned it into something else because it just, you know, wasn't working. And it's like, just with a little bit of research, you would have been, in my opinion, right there. You know?
Yeah, I mean, it is tough. I mean, you know, I started mine, and mine is tiny compared to what you have. And you know, I just started it last year, kind of going around, and then it kind of evolved into something else. But it is tough. I mean, the marketing is crazy. Instagram, I never even had an Instagram. And then so only up until like a few months ago, I'm like, I should probably get an Instagram because that is like a huge marketing tool. But anyway, so, you know, I appreciated that of you. And so regarding your company, what point did you start that in your career?
I started in 2019. Was researching in 2018, so that put me just about, I guess, 20 years into that. And I had worked for another company for years, another private training organization. I'd worked for them for years, and, you know, was successful and promoted, I suppose, within that company to start taking on additional classes, and it was great. But I just, you know, had decided that I'd really like to do it myself. I looked at how they did it. I said, gee, I think I can do it better. And here's if I ever owned a company, this is what I would do. And I just knew there were certain ways I wanted to do it. I wanted to have a different mission. I wanted to have a different personality, right? Your brand is just a personality. That's what that means. I wanted our personality to be different.
Yeah.
You mentioned professionalism. I wanted ours to be dynamic. I wanted guys to go to our class and be like, oh my God, was that 8 hours over already? Like, gosh, I just really enjoyed that. And I wanted guys just to talk about our stuff like it was just the coolest thing in the world. And I wanted it to be kind of boutique-y, for lack of a better word. I wanted it to be, this isn't for everyone. You know, this is a special kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so, launched the company, and with one class, we had one class, a patrol tactics class that I had written when I first got promoted to sergeant. And much like, I'm sure you can attest, when you get promoted to sergeant and you get sent to sergeant school.
Yeah, that's fun.
You don't, how was a nice way of saying this? I'm trying to think. You don't learn from that class alone sort of how to do sergeanty things, especially in the field.
Not at all.
No mention of field craft. So you learn about writing evals, you learn about, Generation X and Generation Y. And one of our scenarios was, okay, Scott, you're a sergeant now, and you've got this old grumpy guy in the back of this briefing, and he's sitting there like this is bullshit. I don't care. Yeah. Okay, go counsel him about being a dick, you know. And I'm like, oh, you know, okay.
They still use that, by the way. Same scenario.
It's like, yeah, that's good, and that has its time. But you know what? No one's going to get killed in briefing.
Yeah.
Right. So the next day, when they slap stripes on your arm and send you to night shift, and a hot call comes out, and you're in charge, and everyone's looking at you like, what would you like us to do, sir? Yeah. And the decisions you make can have deadly consequences. Right?
Oh, yeah. Fuck
we
yeah.
Probably should be preparing those sergeants for that first. Let's start with that.
Yeah.
And then we'll worry about the, you know, evals and all that stuff afterwards.
Yeah, I agree.
I wrote that course, that first response tactics for critical incidents and in-progress crimes, long course, or long name, short course. I wrote that course for all the things that I thought should be in that sergeant school, and it was just about running hot calls from everything I knew, the research I had done, the books I had read, the interviews I had done with people, and studying after action reports. And I started like, how can I make this like super easy to understand on, getting containment, setting up an officer in charge, what's the mission, what's the crime, what's the threat, is the juice worth the squeeze, right?
Yeah.
Little things, how to catch bad guys.
Yep.
How to work barricades, how to make decisions, and that course just took off, and we added on and started hiring really awesome instructors, not guys that just said, well, I'm retiring and sounds like a fun thing to do, or no thanks, we're good. Getting like super dynamic personalities and dudes that are in it, and they're research minded, and they're just awesome instructors, and man, it's just been an awesome ride. And now I think we've got like 10 classes and 10 instructors, and we're going to different states and just traveling around, and it's a blessing. It's a pleasure.
That's, I mean, in a very short amount of time in 2019, I mean, sounds like you guys have grown. That's pretty big.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's really cool. All right. So that's, I'm the classes, your company that you've evolved over a very short period of time is really, really cool. I mean, that's like inspiring for me, starting out doing like really kind of what you have going on. So that's really awesome. And I want to get into some of the classes that you offer, and I want to dive into some of those and talk about responding to a critical incident. And we talked a little bit about responding to an active shooter type stuff, which seems like it's like happening all the time now. But before we get into that, I do want to bring up, I posted something on Instagram recently about, because I was thinking about it, and usually I leave everything personal out of Instagram, but I was like really fired up on this subject. These YouTube stars and Instagram stars who were cops for a very, very short amount of time, which good for them. I thank them for what they did. But when you look at some of their history, and it shows that they've been they were fired, or I don't know, they retired after a very short amount of time. So I would like to assume probably medical retirement. No shame on that, but they're going on YouTube and Instagram now, and they're really they're starting their own training businesses for law enforcement. And the common theme I've noticed with them is what bothers me is how they're so vocal and negative about the profession, the agency that they worked at, administrators. They're openly bashing hardcore on like where they came from. And I can think of one, and I'm not going to mention, but they have a podcast now actually, and they're all about slandering like administrators and making T-shirts that are slandering the admin and politicians and stuff. And here's the deal, guys. Like, if you're listening to this and you're still in law enforcement, like all three of us sitting here right now, that stuff, if you're following along with that and you're getting involved in that type of stuff, it's going to haunt you. It will come back and haunt you. And you have to think to yourself, the folks that are doing that stuff because they have a huge following and they're funny, and people think, oh, they're hilarious. Like, well, they might be hilarious, but by you following along with that and buying their merchandise or supporting their stuff on Instagram or social media, you're really putting yourself out there at risk. If you get involved in something at work, if you don't think that that's not going to get brought up in civil court or even a jury trial in criminal court for that matter, you're so sorely wrong. Liking a photo of one of these guys, and I know you guys know who I'm talking about, on YouTube or Instagram or whatever, that gets logged. And there are attorneys out there that take an officer involved shooting for an example, right? If you're in an officer involved shooting and you're involved in these accounts and liking their photos and buying their merchandise that say, fuck my admin and like really vulgar stuff that I'm not even gonna say, you're really doing yourself a disservice. You're going to get in big trouble, if not fired. But if you end up in court, I feel bad for you, because that's going to come back and really bite you in the ass. Well, it bothers me. It actually I get really angry actually when I think about it, because here we all three of us are sitting here, right? We've had our experiences through law enforcement. some really, really bad, but we're still doing it. Like, we're still going out there and protecting our communities. Scott's going out and doing his training and trying to make people better on a professional level, while going to work every day and, doing what you do. I just, when I think about these guys who are, I guess, in quote, famous for acting like derelicts on the internet, who used to be cops, I feel like it's almost like a slap in the face to us. It bothers me. I don't like their immatureness about it. I think it's childish. A lot of the shit they're putting out there anyways is like, oh, cool, you used to do that 10 years ago. Well, guess what? What we did 10 years ago isn't what we're doing today. And they're getting all these like younger generation cops to follow them. And I just see to me, it's like a recipe for disaster. I don't know. I mean, what are your thoughts on it? I'd like to hear from both of you about it.
I haven't seen this fired up about something in a while, though. It's pretty cool. You're ready to throw some punches, I think, here. But no, I think that law enforcement people or personnel, wherever you are within the law enforcement agency, dispatchers, whatever, you have to understand that you represent the department you work for, and you represent the profession
and yourself.
Well, you represent yourself, and maybe that I would disconnect that, because maybe yourself, you honestly think that's cool, or maybe yourself, you're very political about not liking some certain thing in politics. That's great. Yourself, keep that to yourself, or talk about it amongst your friends. Social media and things like that, once you put that out there, not only do you represent the agency that you work for, and you may have never represented your agency on Facebook, Instagram, whatever social media, it's very easy to figure out where we all work. It's not that hard to figure that out.
Yeah.
And you're tainting that. Not only are you tainting the agency, you're tainting the profession as a whole. And if you sit there and you do things or stupid things, and I've seen people out at bars drinking, having a good time, and as simple as wearing a thin blue line shirt or something like that, and you go and maybe you start mouthing off to somebody or something like that. You're now representing the profession as a whole, and this is why the public at times will be like, look at these guys, they think they're untouchable and they're immune from things like that. You have to understand that you are representing so much more than just yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I got a ton of messages from that little post that I did. I didn't realize it was there was a lot of people that were like, actually, like, hey, thanks for saying that. Like, we agree, I don't know. I mean, Scott, what's your opinion? I think it makes us as a whole look bad. We're trying to, fucking salvage our profession right now to the community, and we have these guys that are slandering us, basically.
Yeah, I would say, there's a difference between being professional and being saying everything.
Yeah.
It's okay to have like strong feelings about politics, or strong feelings about your admin, or any of that kind of stuff. And it's a different thing if you're going to put that on the internet, right, for the world to see. And the problem is when you put something on the internet, taken out of context. So, I see things just like everybody does on social media and in the news, and I would like to, espouse my feelings about that. That's not the right format to do it, like in my company's, advertising materials. And I have to be thinking, well, gee, how does this make everyone else look that I represent not only the industry, but the instructors that work for me, myself, my agency, that kind of thing. But I would also say that is what feels good now when I push like, or I say, let's get at it, or I put a comment on something, or I wear this t-shirt, what feels good now, will it feel good 5 years from now in a different context? By that I mean when you're sitting once you've been involved in a shoot, will it look good? It feels good right now to be like, short-term dopamine hit, I hit like, admin sucks, yep, my admin sucks too, or whatever their messaging is this going to feel as good a week from now, a year from now, when someone sees it, your boss, your chief, the court that you're involved in, is that going to be the same? Is this a short-term win with a long-term risk? And just be careful, right? So if my company puts out some advertising that is controversial or something like that, or some photo that's it's kind of clever, right? It's clever and it's pithy and that kind of thing. And you decide you want to, like it or put a comment on it. Maybe it doesn't affect me, but it affects you. It's your agency who's, well, gee, Joe just put in for sergeant. And I remember Joe because we're in a small PD and we all know each other's business. Joe likes to wear these shirts that say this, or Joe likes to, has this bumper sticker on his car. Joe likes to say this in briefing. I'm not even talking about social media. Or I would just be cautious about what your personal brand is within your department, your community, and if you would like, maybe you think, Scott's an old guy. These, although Kyle and Billy are not old, but they're experienced and they're talking, they're just talking hypotheticals. Let me be specific.
Yeah.
Right? Look up, Google this phrase. Just Google this phrase: Dustin Pigeon, Oklahoma City Sergeant. Dustin Pigeon, Oklahoma City Sergeant. Dustin Pigeon's a man that was shot to death in Oklahoma City by a sergeant. I forget his name, but he worked in Oklahoma City PD. And he shot a man that was holding a lighter and a bottle of starter fluid for like a barbecue. Thought he had a knife is what the story goes. Video's online. You can watch it. That's a separate issue. Look at the court case. Look at that sergeant's T-shirt business that was introduced into court as evidence of maybe not premeditation, but state of mind. The sergeant involved in this controversial shooting where guy called on himself. Dustin Pigeon called on himself and said, I'm feeling suicidal. I'm feeling suicidal. Please come help me. Oklahoma City officers get there. Two guys see him. Dustin kind of starts walking away. They take off running after him. One of these officers puts a less lethal round on him. Boom! And the sergeant who ran out, cursing, swearing at him, get on the effing ground, get on the effing ground.
Yeah.
Shoots the guy after he hears the less lethal round go off. Was it contagious fire? Sympathetic fire? Not sure. Those are separate tactical issues. Look at the court case where the lawyers for Dustin Pigeon's estate said, just look at the T-shirt business and look at the messages that are on these T-shirts. That this sergeant, he's got his own little business going. Just look at his Facebook posts. At the juvenile messaging that was on a T-shirt. We can all think of something clever to write on a T-shirt that would make our cop friends laugh, be entertained. Maybe it's true.
Yeah.
Something about hunting people. We hunt people all the time. Billy, I think that's what you do for a living. Like, go try to find people that don't want to be found. It's different taken out of context, and it's different when you put that on a T-shirt, right? Putting things on a T-shirt and a bumper sticker and making slogans out of it. Just be real cautious about that. Is this going to look good tomorrow?
Or pushing that meme out too. That's just to go even less. It's like you said, sharing, whatever. It's simple as that. It doesn't have to be you don't have to go give money and buy a shirt. You can just be like, share, done.
I would just caution everybody out there, especially guys that are still cops, that are listening, like be careful about that. And although, albeit it may be funny and that person has a million followers, like, cool. Like what Scott just said, I mean, it's happened to cops where like that has bit them in the ass where, I think we had talked about, they filed charges on him. And it wasn't just a bad shooting, but because he had this T-shirt company and he's printing this negative, vibes about like wanting to kill things or kill people or whatever, he got charged with, like murder with intent because they went back and said, well, look, this guy's obviously like looking for this stuff, I mean, he's looking to get into a shooting and kill somebody or potentially kill somebody. So when you guys are going to follow these guys and jump on their bandwagon, I would be very careful. There's a company out there, and I'm not going to say who they are on this, but I noticed that they were putting out on Instagram T-shirts they were going to make, and like I said, he's no longer in law enforcement. So what the hell? What does he care, right? He just wants to make money on all of you, on all of us. One of the designs was like inappropriate. I mean, involving like guns being pointed at people and like money and stuff. And I'm like, he's representing cops, and I actually messaged him. I go, dude, I don't like it. I think the message you're putting out is it's inappropriate for our profession. And he's like, he actually responded, and he's like, oh, well, it's about seizing money as a narcotic officer or whatever. And I go, yeah, okay, well, it may be fine for you, and you're making money on that, but the guy that buys that and then gets into a shooting or something happens at work, like you could be affecting his life.
That's funny.
I don't like it. I don't like it at all.
I don't even know what you're talking about. I don't know what shirt you're talking about, but as I've done several years of narcotics, I've never seized money at gunpoint. I will tell you that much.
Yeah, so yeah, really, I mean,
it's always been after the fact. They're like, oh man, this guy's got a shit ton of money. Let's seize it.
That topic just gets me a little fired up. I mean, like I said, I feel like we're doing it the right way. And I'm not saying the way we're doing it is like the end all be all, like, right? And we are not the end all be all. I get that. I'm not saying that.
Well, I mean, you're not, maybe.
Scott
is. I mean,
yeah, savage. What kind of guy? I mean, that's badass.
Literally, you were born into this. Like, yeah. You put the last name like Savage.
Yeah, that is pretty cool, Scott. But I guess I just want to put a message out there that I know it's funny. It may look cool, but understand you are in a job where that is going to get scrutinized later on down the road if you're involved in something, and it very well might hurt you in the long run. So just be careful about it. And there's companies out there that are putting out good quality training, and they're not advertising stuff like that. So just, I don't know, think about that. You know, the next time you want to do something, you know, that's it.
Yeah, you know what a parallel might be, because I know we're going to talk a little bit about tactics and stuff like that. A parallel might be that, you know, when you're in the field and you're deciding what to do in a particular tactical situation, barricades, manhunt, we're going to make this high-risk arrest, whatever it is. One thing we always try to plan for is what can the suspect do, right? The suspect gets a vote in every kind of conflict we have. The suspect can do somewhere around 7 different things. They can fight, flee, attack, ambush, lie in wait. There's a variety of things the suspect actions he can take, and we try to pre-plan. Do we have the ability to deal with any choice he makes, right? Because you don't just want to be able to deal with, well, I can only deal with him if he complies.
Right.
No, we want to be ready for all the different choices he can make. And we always try to think, when we look at tactics, will this tactic survive the suspect making a different choice? Because, give you an example, you'll see videos of, like, you know, cops and maybe like in the UK, and they're dealing with a guy with a knife, and they just got their sticks out, and it's a video, and they talk to him, and everything goes great. And then they go, gee, you cops in the US, why did you just do that? Well, trainers, we go, well, wait a minute now. If that suspect had made a different choice, would that tactic have survived that? So if I just sit there with my stick out and say, come on, man, put down the knife, and he just goes, no, I'm going to actually stab you. That didn't work. Similarly, when you're thinking about, like, pushing like or buying t-shirts or commenting on social media things, is this going to survive scrutiny by your chief?
Good point.
When it goes to court, when you go for promotion, what is cool to you and your friends who have a similar timeline than you, or some cop in another part of the country, is it going to be as cool when the chief sees it? Is it going to be as cool when there's a picture on the internet on a news site with your name and picture on it, and being like, man, this is the kind of stuff that he's into? Because we work in California, so if you seem like, man, these California cops are super cautious about everything.
There's a reason.
Good reason.
Our laws are kooky, crazy. Like, you wouldn't believe the stuff that we'll tell you about. And our laws, if you just think, well, gee, that's California. They're on no. I just went to Illinois to teach a class to Illinois, and I said, hey, could you send me your use of force laws to the host? Could you send me your use of force law? In California, it's called 835A. That's our sort of use of force law. And I said, could you send me the equivalent of this? And the host from Illinois goes, oh, yeah, I'll send it to you. We just got a brand new law last Saturday that the boys and girls are up in arms. Scott, you're never going to believe it. And he sends it to me, and it's called the Safe T Act. And he says it's meant to keep you safe from the cops. And he sends it to me, and I go through it. It's a copy and paste of our new use of force law. Illinois copied California. And my understanding is that other states are going, oh, what are they doing in California? Let's copy that. Yeah. So if you're some cop in some other state and you're like, screw those California guys, they don't know what they're talking about. I'm telling you, we come with warnings. Like, we're like, hey, man, we're trying to get you to read the tea leaves here, bro. This stuff is coming your way, right? And we want you to be careful and cautious because we want you to have a long, successful career. So be suspect, right? The classes we teach, we tell students all the time, don't believe a word I'm telling you. You don't even know me.
Yeah.
You should be able to recreate everything I'm telling you. Meaning, if I say there's a case that in Oklahoma City that said that, Google it, double check. Maybe I'm wrong.
And
don't trust any instructors. Everything they're telling you is gospel, right? Because it seems right. It seems like they're correct, but we want to be very careful because it's your career, not theirs, that could be damaged by this stuff.
Well, I think that you brought up 835A of, which is California's penal code on use of force and everything. If you're an officer in California and you don't have a very, very good recollection, almost word for word, if not word for word, of that, you need to start looking at it more, because that'll save you, and it'll save you, and it will kill you if you don't know it, or if you do know it. So, just my word to the wise out there that I'll put out there.
Yeah, know that stuff, guys. Like, know your case law. Know the penal code of laws of arrest. And Graham versus Connor. I mean, I've sat in briefing and I've literally, asked the trainee, who's like a phase 3 guy who's about to be off FTO. I'm like, hey, what's Graham v. Connor? No clue. I'm like, are you kidding me? Go out of the briefing room, go figure out what it is, and then come back here and you're going to present to everybody what it is. If you don't know that, man.
Or Tennessee versus Gardner. Those are two you better know those ones, right?
Yeah, you got to know that. That's going to affect your life. That'll definitely affect your livelihood. So know that crap. Anyways, and
if you're the trainee and like Sergeant Kyle keeps jamming you up on that, just remember when he says that, just say crime, threat, resistance, escape.
Yeah. There's
that. Crime, threat, resistance, escape, evasion. And then he'll be like, okay.
If you can rattle that off, I'd be like, good on you. You know what it is. So anyways, all right, we'll get off. I want to get off on that tangent. I just wanted to throw that out there because
you're going to get off your soapbox.
Yeah, it annoys me. It really does. So Scott, you were a supervisor. We when I was talking to you on the phone, we were kind of talking about responding to a critical incident, and you actually have one of your classes is responding to such an event or a call. And I kind of brought up the whole active shooter thing. And I think I've mentioned it on our podcast before about how it's really, I don't necessarily agree with our tactics on certain things, and I'm comfortable enough saying that I think that when Columbine happened is what swung the pendulum so far to the other side about responding to an active shooter, because we all know what happened in Columbine, right? And it seemed like after that it was like, okay, the new rule is going to be if you're the first guy on scene or gal on scene and there's an active shooter situation, you're going to get out, you're going to run in there, and you're going to just neutralize the target, right? And I could be wrong, but it seems like that's just the way we've done it ever since. And what year was that? That was in the 90s, correct? Okay, so I think I'm sure we've evolved the tactics maybe a little bit since then on responding to an active shooter, but I don't think a whole lot. And it seems like now every time we turn on the TV, there's like an active shooter somewhere in the country. There's been an active shooter, and there's been a lot of cops that have been killed responding to either an active shooter or some type of critical incident where some type of shooting has occurred. And when you look at these calls where these officers have been killed, they're showing up and there's no shooting going on. It's done and over with. They've done their murdering or whatever they've done. They don't know where the suspect even is, and these guys are just running into the situation. And I'm going to use like a house or a building as an example, right? Because that's generally where it's occurring, either a school or a building or whatever. Rarely does that happen at a residence, but you're getting guys that are just running into these buildings and not knowing what's going on, not knowing where the shooter's at. There's no shooting going on, so how can you even judge where you're even going to respond to if you're not responding to the sound of the gunfire, which is what we're trained to do? And they're getting killed. And I can think of one example that sticks out to me was I think it may have been a year ago. I don't know if you guys remember this, but it was in Colorado, and a guy goes into a grocery store. This was fairly recent. So a guy goes into a grocery store and he just starts shooting people, employees, customers, whatever. All the employees and customers all run out of the store, right? Obviously. So he's killed a bunch of folks in there. He's wounded people. Obviously, people are calling 911. And there's a guy standing in the parking lot of this grocery store and he's filming on his phone, which seems to be the thing to do nowadays, which is sickening. But he's filming it, and the first 2 cops arrive. He's yelling at the cops frantically. He's inside. The gunman. There's no shooting going on. In fact, the shooting had stopped for a decent amount of time at this point. Those first 2 cops that got there, I feel, got sucked into that. They run into the grocery store. No clue where this guy's at. He's armed with a rifle. Shoots them both, or at least shoots the first guy through the door because he's waiting for him. Kills him. The other guy retreats out of the building. So now the partner is dead, laying in the grocery store. And that threat never got neutralized. In fact, now there's a dead cop out of it. Hours go by, and I don't remember the exact circumstance of they either shot and killed this dude, or I think he shot himself. But you know, that I guess what I'm getting at is we really got to change up our tactics on how we're responding to these things, because you know, I have been in shootings and I have been shot at several times, and I'm here to tell you that is a very, very scary event, knowing that potentially you're going to get killed, right? But how can you just respond to something, tell somebody to respond to something, you have no clue where the gunman's at, and to just tell an officer, just go run into that building and go neutralize them? Well, how the fuck is he supposed to know where he's at if the shooting isn't going on? I think we need to do a little bit better job of like scale back. And Scott, when you and I were talking, it's like when you get somewhere, like, what do we have? You had said it on the phone, like, give it a name. Is it a barricade? Is it an active shooter? Is it a hostage situation? Give it some type of name of like what we're dealing with so that we know how to respond to it. Because in my opinion, and maybe I'll get heat for this, I don't care, but in my opinion, if I show up to something and I know that there was an active shooter inside of a grocery store, I'll say for an example, and I show up and there's no shooting going on, I'm not hearing any shooting, I'm sorry, but I'm here to tell you, I'm not just going to go running into that building, because I know what the consequences could be of me doing that. And to me, it's not smart. That's just not a smart thing to do. I don't know. What are your feelings on that?
Well, I would just say, first of all, before we get a professional's opinion on it, is the absence of tactics is not a tactic, is what I would say. And you know, just going and doing something, that's not a tactic. There's a way to do that. You know, you know, you have a SWAT background, you have some SWAT background, you know, there's the tactics background. It's, if you told a SWAT team, hey, there's a guy in there and go shooting, go run in there and get it. They don't just run in there and go look for him. They do it tactically. So you have to,
in technology, and I mean,
well, whatever it is, you know, sometimes you can't wait for technology. I understand that. No matter what, if it's, you know, let's change your scenario a little bit and say it's a school and there's kids, and now you do hear a little bit of gunfire going on.
That's different.
It is different. No, you're going in. I get that, but you're not just running in.
No,
you're using what tactics you know, and you're using them to the best of your ability.
Yeah, cover. I mean,
cover, concealment, whatever it may be, the simple, easy ones. But
I really, Scott, I'll get to you, but I
get to the professionals.
Yeah, well, I just truly think that there's very few times that you're going to show up to something and just boom, you're going in.
No, and I agree 100% on that. There's very few, almost slim to none. I think maybe the school shooter maybe is
a school shooting. A cop is either screaming for help or is wounded, or it's an active shooter somewhere and it's actively shooting. I mean, those are there's few circumstances where we should be training guys to just show up and go running into something. I mean,
but you keep saying showing up and running into something, and I think that we should never be training that. We should never be training just show up and run into it. or show up and use the skills that you have.
Right.
And if you don't have those skills, then here are the skills that we can teach you. You don't just run into it going, "Hey, here I am."
Yeah, blind. Yeah, I know, and it's, I don't know.
I think it happens. Like someone will say, "Oh, you're making it an unreal situation." I think it happens more often than we think, where cops just go like, "Oh, I'm here, and they told me to go in there, so I'm gonna knock on the door and go in there."
Yeah, I mean, recently they're here in California. You guys know, just down south, the SWAT team that showed up to this guy that was shooting his family inside the house, right? I don't know if this rings a bell for you guys, but this is very recently. And their SWAT team gets there, and, it's unfortunate. There was no shooting going on at the time when they got there, but I think that they made the decision, hey, we potentially have victims inside that house. He's still in there. They decided to rally up and go make entry, and they didn't even get to the front door before the guy starts shooting at him, shoots and kills the SWAT officer, and then they end up retreating anyways. I don't know. I just think that I think we could do a better job of figuring this out and how to properly respond to these types of calls. I mean, what's your opinion?
Yeah, so much.
I know. Sorry, I know that was long-winded.
I went off on a tangent or two. Sorry.
No, it's great. It's a great discussion, and if you're listening to this podcast, I would just think back to the scenario that you're describing. That cops are sent to a grocery store. There's a bad guy inside. He shot some people. You get there, someone's saying, "Hey, you guys got to get in there. He's in that door." Just start asking yourself some essential questions. Then, right? What would those questions be? Well, what do we have here? What is this? Like Kyle said, can we give this a name? Was it an active shooter, or is it an active shooter? If it's not currently an active shooter, what does that make this? Give it a name. Is it a barricade? Possible barricade? Is it a manhunt? Did he flee? Is it a hostage barricade? Your ability to name something, while that may sound pedestrian, is advanced for these reasons. It's going to start to shape your thinking. Right? The minute I know what this is, right? This is the hostage barricade. This is the active shooter. That's going to start to dictate things after that. So just ask yourself a moment, what is this? Not what the call came out as. Not what this man over here is saying it is. Not what I believe it is based on some training I went to, and I've been primed to believe this is something. What actually is this? Using the 5 senses that God gave me when I arrive on scene, and I get my rifle out and I take a look around. What am I seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling, sensing? What are those, intrinsic things that are happening in my brain? I'm sensing things and making rapid comparisons against other times I've been on these calls. Have I been on a shooting before? Have I been on an active shooter before? Or have I done the reading? I work in an agency. I don't get exposed to this, but I've done the reading and I've prepared, right? Like, General Mattis said, he's never been outsmarted by an enemy because he's done the reading. Nothing is new. He's comparing now this against what's happened in the past. So you've now given this thing a name. Start asking yourself some more questions. What would those be? Well, what am I doing here? What do I hope to accomplish? Can I do it safely? Am I willing to risk safety? Am I willing to risk a lot to save a lot? Or am I risking a lot to save a little? Just a few essential questions will start kind of getting the ball rolling, the mental math going. Because in law enforcement, we call getting sucked in.
Yes.
Getting sucked into something, right? Either by my partners running into something, or it sounds sensational, right? It sounds sensational over the radio, and everyone's getting amped up. And I arrive on scene, the tendency is to get involved in this emotional thing, and that's why we do the training ahead of time, because at that moment, training is irrelevant. There's no time to train. It will only be action. And very simply, what can happen is the dispatcher gets jacked up, the sergeant got jacked up, the first in officer ran in, and guess what? That first in officer has now dictated our response. All the cool tactics and the planning and the grease boards and the special teams and all the shit that we thought we were going to do have now gone out the window because we had someone run into the objective. Now we're all going to go because now they're screaming for help. And everything kind of goes out the window. And so you young guys don't think, well, that's sergeant-y things. You're talking about tactics and planning. No, it's you. because you're going to get there first. You brand new officer, and the decision you make, go, don't go, stay, delay for a second, pause, take a breath, form a team. No, I'm going to run in. Those little decisions will have far-reaching consequences because we're going to react to that. And this thing about just running in blindly, or I'm going to make a solo entry. Okay. Have you ever received formal training in one-man entries on an active shooter? Now, think about that question. I didn't say, would you do it? Does your policy say you should do it? Does the county protocol suggest it? No, I just said, have you ever been trained to do it? Working angles, using
by yourself.
Whatever it is. Maybe you have. Maybe you've attended a solo sort of operator class, and that's cool. But if you haven't, okay, make a note. That's something that we're going to sign up for, right? I would do it, but I've never been trained to do it. Is game day the day you want to do something for the first time?
Hell no. No.
It's the Super Bowl. It's the Super Bowl. I've never really thrown a football before. Do I have this right? Is it the laces?
Yeah.
Well, it's Super Bowl, though. That you never want to do something the first time. And the reason that we try as an industry to promote people that have experience is because they've been there and they've done that. Now maybe they haven't been exactly on this type of incident, this exotic thing is done, but an expert will start comparing past experiences against what they're seeing now and finding the similarities, right? I think they call it thin slicing. Was it Klein or Gladwell calls it thin slicing? I'm getting rid of the information I don't need. I'm starting to see the commonalities. This looks a lot like the last time we did this, or this is most similar to this type of call, and I can play this chess game out very quickly. And so in an active shooter or something like that, yes, it's true. Active shooter, it's been statistically proven that rapidly aggressing the shooter and neutralizing the threat, even distracting them seeing you making entries, sometimes they turn the gun on themselves and solve the call for you. But that's true. That's all true. That is a different thing than saying we're going to blindly rush in, absent any tactics, safety, or any of that stuff. If I told you there's an active shooter behind his door, but he's got a Browning machine gun fixed on the door and there's only one way in, are you telling me you're going to make entry there?
Some guys would say, I would.
Mission.
Yeah, you're like, bullshit.
That's called a suicide mission. And
BS.
And this thing about we're going to practice stuff on the range, or we're going to say in a sterile building, look how awesome I am in my diamond formation, or I'm working all these corners and stuff like that. Okay. Yeah. Is that realistic training?
Exactly.
Is that taking into account the realism and the fear and the human factors and the confusion, the fog and the friction and all of the other stuff that come along with actual critical incidents, and just start asking yourself some of those essential questions. If you're driving around your town, you're like, dude, nothing's ever going to happen here. I work at some little agency and like, man, it sucks. These guys are talking about cool stuff. Okay. The dudes that work in Columbine, right? That was the Jefferson County Sheriff's Department in Colorado. Do you think before that incident happened, that in briefing that morning, those guys were talking about, something's going to happen in an hour that will forever change law enforcement?
No. Hell no.
They were at a little agency. They were complaining about just the same thing you are right now. Our union sucks, or admin sucks, or whatever. Rehearse tonight. Go out and go to those locations, those shopping malls, those schools. Get your patrol team out. The motivated guys. Get your patrol team out and be like, dude, can we talk about where we're going to park if a active shooter comes out at this grocery store? Because I'm just thinking parking in the front and going through the front doors is going to suck. Because the dude's going to be should we go to the back? Have we looked at those back doors? Yeah. How would we even get in those? Is there a way? Or, you can do so much right now to prepare for that. So when, God forbid, that ever happens and you're in this crazy situation, you at least go, you know what? I did this once before. I mentally rehearsed this, or I took a class on this, or I talked about this with my patrol team, and we've got a plan. And I remembered what that one guy said about don't park in the front because those bastards are thinking you're going to park there. Park in the back and, tactically go in. To your point, Billy, about rushing in. Yeah, we're going to rush to the call. We're going to rush. We're going to get there quickly. Does that mean we have to rush in? Or can we take a second? Okay, I've got all my shit. I've got my partner here, or I'm going to go by myself. what is this? What do we have here? What do I hope to accomplish? Okay, I'm hearing shooting. Okay, this is an active shooter. And here we go. Calmly. Or, you know what? I've got 4 dudes here. We're going to go take this guy off he's beating his wife. His domestic violence gone wrong. I can hear them. Lethal, less lethal, hands and commands. You work the radio. Ready?
Yeah.
Here we go.
What'd that take?
Yeah. Little planning like that.
A couple seconds.
That could pay dividends.
Yeah, and you know, great points. And you don't have to go to a class to learn what you just said. Like, talk about this stuff in briefing. You know, I do a lot of whiteboard exercises, you know, with scenarios like what we're talking about, and that pays off. And I know a lot of guys probably don't do that, or if you're a supervisor and you just run your briefing with, you know, watching YouTube videos or just bullshitting with your team and not doing any type of training, maybe you should start investing in doing some type of training like what we just talked about. And it doesn't take very long. If you get a 30-minute briefing, you can do a lot in 30 minutes with a whiteboard exercise. And just like what Scott just said, you know, hey, you're less lethal, you're a radio guy, you're hands-on, you know, you're lethal. You know, you guys ready? How hard is that to come up with that type of plan? You know, I don't know. I just think that I get really sad when I hear of cops getting killed, because I know in their head they're thinking they got sucked into it, and in their head they're thinking like, oh, fuck, I was told I have to go in. I'm going in. And it's because they don't have the experience of probably being shot at or being in some type of in an event where, you know, cops have been killed. They're just doing what they were told to do, and they really don't know any different. You know, it's kind of sad to me that happens. And I think it's up to us, the veteran guys in law enforcement or sergeants or whoever, to share these things and go over this type of stuff in your roll calls. You may prevent an officer from doing something silly that's going to get him killed. And I'm going to share a little story with you guys. Just happened this weekend. And it may seem minor, but we get a call just this weekend. A guy calls and says, "Hey, my son just shot himself. He's still alive. He still has a gun with him. He's in the backyard." Okay, that's it. I'm thinking, okay, did he commit suicide? Did he shoot himself in the head? Did he accidentally shoot himself? There's a lot of things going through my head as we're all responding to this. He ends up calling back on 911 and saying he's going to wait out front for the officers, and that his son was in the backyard. Now, mind you, this backyard was pretty big and had pitch black. There's no street lights on this street. It was like 1 a.m, and it was a very large backyard with a lot of clutter, cars back there, bunch of stuff. Okay, it wasn't the nicest house. So I ended up getting on scene first with a newer officer who just started at our department. She's a lateral, but he's in the front and he's doing the typical, like, he's not crying or nothing. Didn't look visibly upset that his son had just shot himself, but he was like, "Come on, guys, he's back here. I'm going to show you the way. You need to save his life." And he's like running into the backyard. And in my head, I'm thinking, no, we're not just going to go running into this backyard. I don't know what the hell. I don't know anything. I don't know any circumstances behind this. I don't know if this guy's setting us up, because he could be. I don't know where the son's at, who's supposed to be armed with a gun. And the first couple officers that I was with, that I was there with, you know, they got sucked into wanting to follow him into this backyard, because in their head, they're thinking the guy probably tried to shoot himself and they need to render aid to him. That's all they were thinking. And I had to yell out to him. I said, "Stop. We're not going back there right now." And I'm trying to tell the guy to come back to us. And it was just so weird how his behavior was just like, no, he's like, "Come on, follow me. I'm going to take you back there." And he's like dipping and weaving in between these cars in this backyard. And I lost sight of the guy. I can't even see him. I finally had to yell at him. I'm like, "No, we are not going back there until you come down here." You know, and he's telling us his son's going to die and all this. And long and the short is, we finally got control of him, and I waited for more officers to get there. We formed up a team, and we tactfully made our approach way up into this backyard where he had shot himself inside of a vehicle. And unfortunately, he was deceased. But, you know, I had to talk to the officers the next day in briefing. I debriefed it with them, and I said, "Hey, if I wasn't there, all of you would have just run into that backyard, because in your head you were taking what he said was that you needed to go save his son. I'm like, let me spin it a little bit. What if he was mentally ill and wanted to ambush us that night, and that was the call to get us there, and you run into the backyard and he grabs a gun and shoots you or kills all of you? Or what if the son was somewhere in this yard who was supposedly was armed with a gun? We didn't know that he was deceased, and he wants to shoot you. I'm like, you guys got so sucked into feeling the need to go help somebody that you didn't think about any of that other stuff. And I know that comes with experience, but it was a really good reminder to them, because all of them were like, you're right. We were going to go running into that backyard because we assumed that he had shot himself.
I think that the long and the short of that is control what you can control. It's as simple as that. There's, we're law enforcement, we're control freaks, and we should be in a lot of situations. And in that situation, I wasn't there. I think of many things that you can control him. You can say, hey, come here, come talk to me. I can put you in the back of my car. You don't need to put him in handcuffs or whatever. Yeah. You can sit him in the back of the car, and then you guys can devise your plan. But don't let someone control what you do. Control your own thing, and not necessarily. I'm not telling you don't let your sergeants or your partners not let them control what you do, but come up with a plan. Use that plan. Control what you can control.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I understand that we're in this job to help people, but we're also not in this job to sacrifice our lives blindly. If that happens, it happens, and it is what it is. But at least use good tactics, on things that you're going to, and don't get caught up in the whole. Scott mentioned just a minute ago about getting sucked into something. It's very easy to do. Sometimes I think our emotions will feed off of other people's emotions, like the reporting party or the complainant or whatever. We'll feed off of their emotion. You have to be able to develop a skill where you're not feeding off of their emotion. You're looking at the totality of the call or the situation that you're at, and start thinking about what you just talked about. Like, what do we have? What's the best way to handle this? Like Billy said, you're not just rushing into it. We'll rush to get there, and we do want to help him, and we will help him. But, you guys, we have to do it safely. And the more that gets talked about, I think the more lives you're going to save, cops' lives that are going to get saved. So I mean, that was just a little story that what we're talking about kind of made me think of it, because, like I said, if I wasn't there to kind of pull him back, they were just going to go waltzing into this backyard, into the unknown.
It's a great story, and it brings up so many great points. And, I think
it is. No, I think I would ask the questions would come up now. Why do the officers feel they needed to run into the back? And probably what they would say is, well, we're trying to save this
exactly.
man's life. And that right there, if you think about it, speaks to the character of law enforcement officers, right?
Yeah.
The character of most cops I know is that they will risk their own safety to try to save someone from themselves.
Yeah.
Even. And this person's not in his right mind, and he's decided that he's going to kill himself by shooting himself. And 911 call comes out, and a few minutes later, here's some cops that are willing to run into the darkness, into a confined area, be funneled into a backyard, and go deal with this thing. And that right there is a very nice thing about cops, very, very noble. And so we never want to take that out or extinguish that flame, but experience allows us to temper that kindness and temper that altruism with safety.
Yeah.
And a lot of cops too, if you were to question them farther about, hey, why did you think you had to get in there? Why did you have to deal with that? They would start to tell you something along the lines of, I felt I had to because he's injured, and we were going to be liable if we don't render aid. And the same thing happens when someone calls and says, I'm going to kill myself, and I've got a gun, and maybe he hasn't shot himself yet, but he's in a house. We call using our earlier questions, what is that? Well, he's a non-criminal American.
Yeah.
You know, he's, for whatever reason, he's in crisis, he's mentally ill, he's suicidal, he's what have you, and he won't come out. But he hasn't committed a crime. And in years past, I can tell you quite plainly, you know, when I first started, we would get to this guy's house who was a 5150 or, you know, a mentally ill person. We'd try for a short period of time to get him to come out. When he wouldn't come out, we'd kill him as well. And we'd point guns at him and say something along the lines of, we're here to help you.
Yeah.
You're not going to kill you, but I'm going to
exactly.
kill you maybe. You know, if you put down your gun, you can't kill you. I might kill you with my gun.
Yeah.
Well, it's a crazy thought,
It's
just to not to interrupt you too much here, but to think that, hey, we're going to come in and we're going to be like, I'm going to kill you if you don't stop trying to kill yourself. You know, that's honestly what we're saying, right?
Yeah.
And it's played out year after year still, you know, across the United States. We have a class called Response to the Non-Criminal Barricade. And the subtext of that class, or the subtitle, is Disengagement Special Relationships. And that special relationship is a law doctrine, much like the public duty doctrine, which defines what legally police officers have to do and what they don't, and when they'll be liable and when they won't. And it's a really misunderstood thing amongst cops when, am I going to be liable if I stop this DUI driver and I let him go for whatever reason and he crashes? Will I be liable? If I go on a call and a guy says he wants to kill himself and we leave because we didn't want to cause a confrontation, but then he kills the neighbor, am I going to be liable? And this vague notion of liability kind of like invades our decision making sometimes, and where cops would go, well, I don't want to be liable because, you know, they'll sue me, and then you ask cops, well, is there a lot of officers that are losing their house? Because that's another one. Cops say, I don't lose my house.
Yeah.
Is there a lot of cops, you know, that are losing their house, or that they've paid personally for these things out of a civil lawsuit? Do you know the difference between criminal liability and legal liability, civil liability? And the reason, as a tactician, as someone who's tactical, which meaning you use your brain and you try to think these things, the reason you want to know about that stuff is because those are called constraints, right? So if the officers that are going into the backyard and think that, like, I got to get in there to help this guy, are you feeling an undue constraint about something? I feel like I have to do something. And is it a real constraint or a false constraint? Meaning, well, I thought I had to. Hey, boss, why'd you go through the door? Well, I thought I had to. You know, I thought I had to kick in this door, chase him, stop him, render aid, blah, you name it, because I thought I had to. In law enforcement, what we want to be very careful of, especially in this day and age, is what do cops have to do versus what you don't have to do. Because in years past, the tie went to the runner. Everybody loved the cops, made a few mistakes. It really wasn't a big deal because everyone thought that, well, the cops are trying to do the right thing. People don't care anymore. The courts don't care about your altruism or wanting to do the right thing. Now you've got to be near perfect.
Yeah.
And if that is the society's expectation of you to be near perfect, then we want you to be super clear on the rules. What are the rules that I'm operating under, right? I'm playing this game where it's deadly sometimes. What are the rules?
Yeah.
What do I have to do versus don't have to do? What's a policy, a law, a protocol, a good idea? How do all those play out? So, you know, some of the training we do, we try to help cops understand the difference between those things, because you can sign up for a training class that's like rah, we're America's heroes, thin blue line, just do the best you can and act reasonably and you'll be fine. That's not true. I can show you case after case where that is not true. The policemen and the policewomen acted reasonably. They thought they were doing a great job. They acted for altruistic reasons, and they faced criminal liability now. Right? That's the difference that's coming up now. Cops are sitting in orange jumpsuits for things. So we've got to be like crystal clear about what are the rules, because those rules and those laws inform our tactics. Right? When we go, because I don't know if I told you guys, but I can win any fight. I don't know if I've shared with you that I can win any fight. I want you guys to go back to your agency right now, and I want you to find the biggest, baddest dudes in your jurisdiction. Bring them to me, and I will win this fight. Watch this. The minute they put their hands up and say, I'm going to kick Scott's ass, I'm going to shoot him.
I was going to say, when you going to shoot him?
Now, did I win the fight?
100%.
Of course.
That dude's dead. I'm alive. I mean, you cannot argue with it. I won the fight. There's a few other things we need to talk about, though, right? The Constitution, the law? Was I legally allowed to do that? Was that proportional force? Was that a violation of the Constitution?
Yeah.
It was. So tactics are one thing. Knowing how to do something or winning fights, that's, to be honest, we can train most people to do degrees, to bust down a door. Those are the manipulative skills that are fairly
easy.
simple. The real stuff comes into, why are we doing these things? Can I do these things, and then should I be doing these things? Maybe the law is on our side, and we do have legal backing. But is this the hill where we want to die on? Is the juice worth the squeeze? Right? Those are the essential questions that, as you get time on as a cop and you become a tactician or just a thinking sort of police officer, different than the training you were talking about where we're making shirts and that stuff. We're talking about something a little bit more elegant, a little bit more nuanced, right? This is the hard thing to do. We can make you cool T-shirts and slogans and say, like, let's just go out and
crush it,
write people tickets and crush it and get dope off the street. That's important. That's important. But there's bigger things at play here, and as this job starts to become more and more difficult, and the public expects us to be higher levels of proficiency, you're going to have to start asking these tough questions.
Well, I think that brings up, like, the public doesn't realize sometimes that, when I, just bring up what I brought up about, use of force and knowing the laws, policies, and case law and everything behind it. You have to understand that an officer is going through that checklist in milliseconds sometimes, of this. Am I within policy? And I can sit back and we can go, oh yeah, I wouldn't have done that, or this is how I would have done it, this is how I would have done it. But that officer or that person or whatever it may be is going through those checklists in their mind so fast. And I've done it, you've done it, and you do it without thinking about it, right? You're not going, okay, can I do this? Can I do this? Can I do this? No, you're going, it's muscle memory.
Yeah.
He did this, I do this. And it comes back to a knowledge of having a good knowledge of it, not just use of force, pursuits, whatever it may be, the big ticket things in the department, entries, things like that, is policy, law, case law, all those things, knowing them and understanding them. Like, I know people that can probably recite, 835A right now. Do they understand it? That's a whole different thing. Because it unfortunately, it does leave a little bit of interpretation, I think.
Yeah, if you're into the how humans make decisions things, you could just get lost.
Oh yeah.
In just a rabbit hole but there's so much great information out there, right? Gary Klein, Malcolm Gladwell, the guys at Force Science. I would look at Lon Bartel from Vertra, Mike Masaga, I always mispronounce his name, but there are so many guys out there that you can read their material and look at how humans really make decisions. And one of the fascinating things I saw the other day was maybe different than the checklist model, is that experts make decisions by choosing the first best workable solution.
Yeah.
Right? Different than a novice. Experts, rapidly thin slice information, look at what's happening, and their mind chooses the first best, kind of workable solution. Not always the best, perfect solution, not always this long, drawn-out analytical procedure, but experts, whether you're an expert chess player, expert, firefighter, expert police officer, whatever you're an expert on, tend to select the first workable solution they have, right? And it is, you're right, unconscious, we're unaware of it. And once, that's why that experience thing, when you hear cops say my training and experience, we can give you all the training in the world. You could sign up as a rookie cop. You could sign up for every class known to man, pay your way through it. And that's a piece of it, right? But there's this other thing that comes from experience. It's just time on.
Yeah.
And what is it? It's just time on seeing things, right? Time on perceiving how clues and cues, and then going, ooh, and then seeing how that thing's turned out, right? And being like, man, the last time I did this, like the story I told you at the beginning where I was on a high-risk car stop. It's going great, and I tell the guy, I say something to my imaginary dog because I thought that was cool. I learned from that, like, gee, that doesn't work well. Never did
Right.
that again, right? And so now when I'm on a high-risk car stop and things are going well, I go, I should just and,
Don't
let
say
this thing
anything.
play out, because so far things are going just swimmingly. So we should just let this thing play out, man. And this dude will be in handcuffs in So expert decision making. So many great books on that, and so much great stuff to read. And if you're a young cop, and you're like, I don't want to read a book. It's like, I get it, bro, but just maybe do a little bit of this research, and this will serve you very well, because you will learn more than the dudes that are just putting in for yet another shooting class, or they're going to buy a 15th knife or tourniquet to put on their vest. It's like you got that.
Yeah.
Go do some of this reading, and it'll.
I can agree with you more. I mean, and if you're a new officer or whatever, and somebody with experience says, we're not going to do that on a call or whatever. It's not because they don't want to, or because they're sissies or whatever. It's because they probably have the experience to, that red flag is raising in the back of their head. Listen to that. There's value out of that. So, go over this stuff in briefing. I think, do whiteboard exercises, debrief these types of calls like that. The example I just gave you. A lot of agents, a lot of guys I just don't think are debriefing that stuff, and they just go on to the next thing.
Well, debrief the perfect call too, or the call that you think was perfect.
Everything.
Debrief it all. I'm key to that, especially if you're on a specialized team where time is of the essence, where you have the time. Once you've made that entry into the house, if you're a SWAT team or a specialized team, and everyone's under control and everything's done, and do another walkthrough with it. Be like, hey, what'd you do? Why'd you do that? What'd you do? Why'd you do that? You'll learn a lot from that.
Yeah, for sure. So, hey, Scott, what classes, tell everybody what classes that you offer currently right now with your company.
We do offer underwater night.
Okay, how do I sign up for that?
It's the best. No. We offer a ton of classes. You can go on savagetraininggroup.com and check them out. I would just point you to, based on this conversation we've had today, I'd point you to about 3 different classes. The first one, that response tactics for critical incidents and progress crimes. That's a 1-day, 8-hour. That class should probably be 2 days, but we know how cops are. Way too much information in 1 day. That way they can never get bored, right? We've got an online version of that. We've got an in-person version of that. So you can actually, if we're not coming to a town near you right now, you could just take the online class, same thing, print a cert at the end of it. The nice thing about the online was you've got constant access to it, so you can go back and use it for briefing training, right? Play the videos. They're all cut up into nice little
Nice.
Take that. That's going to help you learn to make decisions, respond to critical incidents safely, calmly, and methodically. After that, I would say look at the advanced critical incident response course. That's going to take all that stuff to the next level. That course is basically about what would you do in this situation? What would you do about that situation? And the instructor does a great job of kind of tearing apart different incidences and calls, and then let's really kind of examine these from all sides. And that's going to basically accelerate you into becoming an expert decision maker. So if guys are at your agency and maybe you're like, well, gee, I don't have that experience or that experience, this is going to help maybe skyrocket your tactical proficiency a little bit. You don't have to be some SWATologist to go to this stuff. This is patrol. This is patrol, hot calls, critical incidents. The last one I would talk about is that response to the non-criminal barricade course. That is about what do we do when the guy's in the house, he's got a gun, he's crisis, he's suicidal, he won't come out. Most agencies are like, well, I'm good with disengaging, I'm good with leaving there. That's a piece of it. We haven't solved the problem though, because now we're just going to dump this horrible incident on the next coming shift and be like, well, screw day shift. We're night shift, we left, but day shift, you got a real thing going on because that dude is still in crisis. We'll talk about disengaging, re-engaging, which is a different thing. We'll talk about tactics, but the main thing I think that students get from that one is understanding public duty doctrine. What do the police have to do? Special relationships. When do we trigger that? Because triggering the special relationship thing triggers the liability thing. So we'll go through actual cases of when cops walked away and there was liability and when there weren't. And then we give you access to a ton of policies from smart people and other agencies that we don't have to kind of like reinvent the wheel. There's a ton of other classes that are on our website, and I would just encourage you to go check them out. There's training articles, online stuff. Everything under the sun is pretty much on that website, and then there's a contact form. So if you want to ask us a question, you want to talk to some instructor, you want to host a course, you want to interact with us, go on that contact form, and we read all that stuff, and we care deeply about cops. And so if it's a cop asking a question, we're like, let's answer this for this. Let's figure out the answer.
Yeah.
So, just really encourage you to go there, and if you want to follow us and win sweatshirts and stuff like that, go on our Instagram accounts where we give stuff away at Savage Training Group, and we put little training tips and stuff like that, but we try to give away some fun stuff because it turns out cops like.
I was going to say, I'm definitely following that.
Yeah. You heard from guys, and we wouldn't have had you on here if we didn't, if I didn't believe in what you're doing. And like I said, man, if you're listening to this, go onto his website, check out his stuff. It's awesome. He's got great training on there. Take advantage of that. Like he said, go on the online stuff and do that stuff for your briefing. I mean, you'd be kind of a fool not to do that. Can't speak to high enough about you and your company, and what you guys have to offer. I think it's really awesome. So we'll wrap this up. I mean, Scott, thank you.
I just want to say one more thing.
Go ahead, Billy.
I got to cut you off before you cut me off and, finish this whole episode here. But, I mean, I didn't know Scott before this. His reputation precedes himself is what I'm going to say here is, you don't just go to Joe Schmo training. Obviously he's got the moves and he knows what he's doing. He's given us more than enough to talk about and think about. But it sounds to me like if he doesn't know it, he goes and finds the right trainer for it too.
Yeah, I mean, dude, his last name is Savage. You're Savage. So, hey, Scott, how do people find you on Instagram, or how, other than your website, how can people find you?
Yeah, if you want to interact with the company, go on to savagetranninggroup.com. That's the best place, right? If you want to follow our Instagram, it's savagetranninggroup.com. You can find it there. There's only one of them. And then if you're interested in interacting with me, where I spend most of my time online is on LinkedIn. Kind of just a little bit more my style, a little bit more professional, but I'm happy to interact with you, and you can message me there and get questions all the time about what about this case, what about that tactic, what about this, can you help with that? And we spend a lot of time researching and then helping cops with stuff, so you're not bothering me. Yes, I own this company, but ultimately I'm a police officer, right? Just like you. I get it, what you're going through, and we're here to help. And there's a lot of great information out there, not just my company, but plenty of others. And so just want to help you kind of build your career and ultimately keep
that's awesome. That's great. And I love the fact that you're still in it. You're still a cop, and you're still doing what you're doing. I love that about what you're doing. So thank you. And thank you for your service, everything you've done over the last 22 years. So stay safe. Yeah, no problem, man. Stay safe. Again, can't thank you enough for coming on here. And folks, make sure you take advantage of everything that Scott has to offer and sign up for one of his training groups. Host a class. It's not hard to do as long as you have a facility to have a group of people in it. Host one of his classes and empower people. So we'll end it on that. Mr. Savage, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And stay safe out there, man.
Yep.
Thanks, guys.
Hey, 4 hours, shot fired. Copy, additional shot fired.